Okay, so I'm going to make room for Rielle Williams to open the event for us.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here. Welcome friends, colleagues, and special guests. Honourable Dr. Mayan Francis, Sylvia Paris, Kesa Monroe Anderson, Nicole Johnson Morrison, Marlene Ruck Simmonds, Lynn Jones, and the many other supporters of this event. My name is Rielle Simone Williams, and I am the Assistant Executive Director of the Black Cultural Center. I warmly welcome you. On behalf of our Board Chair, Marvin Broom, and our Executive Director, Russell Grosse. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are privileged and thankful to be holding this event today on land that is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. I would also like to acknowledge the existence of people of African descent in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. May we honor and offer gratitude to the ancestors who came before us to this land and the commitment to not let this history be lost. Welcome to this historic event as we gather to commemorate International Women's Day with our friends from the Mount St. Vincent Department of Women's Studies. International Women's Day. We celebrate women, girls around the world. We applaud all they have achieved in the fight for equality. Women and girls have made exceptional gains, demolishing barriers, dismantling stereotypes, and driving progress towards a more just and equal world. I thank you all, our panelists, and those in the audience as well, for your dedication to change, activism, and the progression of women in politics. We all look to you with gratitude and know that you are loved and supported, and we thank you. I'd like to now hand things over to our moderator, who you just heard from for the evening, Maki Motapanyane. Thank you so much. So if you like, you can sit in the chair, or you can stand up here.
Yes, well, I will just say a few very quick remarks and introduce our esteemed panelists, and then I'll have a seat for the rest of the conversation. Yes, okay, there we are. Thank you so much, Rielle. Good evening, everyone. Esteemed guests, all those joining us on live stream. For what I hope will be an enlightening discussion. I think it will. I feel so fortunate that we have the generosity of our esteemed panelists in terms of their making time to be with us tonight. As we gather here at the Black Cultural Center in honor of International Women's Day, and to celebrate and delve into the significant impact of Black women in electoral politics, I'm really anticipating a wonderful conversation. As I mentioned, I'm filled with gratitude and really looking forward to the conversation ahead. I want to share with you a little bit of the motivation behind organizing this panel. Which for me came from a deep-seated belief in the power of representation and knowing the undeniable impact that Black women have had and continue to have in shaping our political landscape. It's a celebration of achievement against odds, a recognition of barriers broken, and importantly, a discussion on the path forward, which I think we're going to have immense wisdom here this evening to help us think through that. So a warm welcome to everyone here. I know each and every one of you bringing your own experiences, insights, and hopes for the future. Tonight for me is more than a panel discussion. It's a reflection on our collective aspirations for a more inclusive and representative political system. It's a testament, I believe, to the progress made and a roadmap for the journey that still lies before us. So thank you very much again for joining us in this important conversation. I want to thank Rielle Williams, who has just been exceptional. We have been organizing this together, myself on the Mount side and she on the Black Cultural side, Black Cultural Center side, and Mr. Russell Grosse as well, and all at the Black Cultural Center for being for us, in the words of the late and great Bell Hooks, a home place of gathering, where we can commune and have these discussions. So without further delay, it's my honor to introduce our esteemed panelists who have graciously agreed to share their insights and experiences with us. Please hold your applause until all panelists have been introduced. So I will begin with the Honourable Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard, who is a model voice for equity and justice and a long-standing exemplar of effective leadership in academia, in the profession of social work, in the community, and in governance. Appointed to the Senate of Canada in 2016 as a representative of Nova Scotia East Preston, her social justice engagement has resulted in notable progress in addressing barriers related to systemic racism, gender inequality, and mental health and ability. She is a founding member of the Association of Black Social Workers and is actively involved with the Africadian Empowerment Academy, which provides full spectrum supports and pathways into the trades for African Nova Scotians. Senator Bernard, an alumna and honorary doctorate recipient of MSVU, is a respected academic with a distinguished career at Dalhousie University and a community leader whose advocacy reflects a lifelong commitment to community empowerment and change-making at the highest levels of Canadian politics. Among her numerous honors, Dr. Bernard is a member of the Order of Nova Scotia and the Order of Canada. In her unwavering resolve, Senator Bernard has taught and mentored countless current and emerging leaders, and I count myself lucky in that group. The Honourable Minister Twila Grosse. Minister Twila Grosse was elected to the Nova Scotia House of Assembly in 2023 as an MLA for Preston. She currently serves as Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs and Minister of the Public Service Commission. Minister Grosse grew up in Cherrybrook and over the years has been actively involved in community engagement, having worked with numerous community organizations and boards. Minister Grosse is also an alumna of MSVU, having graduated with a Bachelor of Business Administrations, time ago, and she worked in finance for the Halifax Airport Authority for 36 years. As a cabinet minister, Minister Grosse's portfolios include significant contributions to health, education, and community services. Her approach to governance and policymaking reflects a deep commitment to improved conditions of life for Nova Scotians, rooted in a practice of care. She is quoted saying, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Okay, Ms. Yvonne Atwell, who is a pioneering figure in Nova Scotia's political landscape, having made history as the first African Nova Scotian woman elected to the Nova Scotia House of Assembly in 1998. Representing the constituency of Preston, her tenure in office was marked by her dedication to social justice, community development, and healthcare. Beyond politics, Ms. Atwell's leadership extends to her work with community-based organizations, where she continues to champion the rights and well-being of African Nova Scotians and other marginalized groups. Yvonne Atwell's portrait hangs in Province House in recognition of her historic election. In 2022, upon addition of the portrait to the legislature, MLA Suzy Hansen is quoted saying, "This has been a long time coming. It is notable to me that the first Black woman was elected in 1998, but it took 23 years for 2 more Black women to be elected to Province House. We need to see more diversity in the people who represent our province, and I hope today helps inspire many young African Nova Scotian women to run for office. This is partly why we're having this discussion today. Ms. Atwell has worked as policy advisor and diversity officer at the Maritime Center of Excellence for Women's Health, Dalhousie University, as executive director of Community Justice Society and the Black United Front, as president of the African Canadian Caucus of Nova Scotia, and as chair of the Indigenous Black and Mi'kmaq Initiative at the Schulich School of Law, Dalhousie University. She is the recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Golden Jubilee Medal for contributions to public life, among other honors. Thank you for being here. Okay, MLA Suzy Hansen is here representing the constituency of Halifax and Needham. She has been a vocal advocate for affordable housing, accessible health care, education, and community safety, among other important issues. Ms. Hansen is the NDP caucus chair and a member of the Community Services, Human Resources, and Private and Local Bills subcommittees. And as if that wasn't sufficiently demanding and impressive, she is also the NDP's chief whip. I find that that is a very tough job. She is a former board member of the Halifax Regional School Board, in addition to her service on other boards and an active record of community service. MLA Hansen is a role model, every day demonstrating the power of representation and the importance of diverse voices in shaping policy. Okay, Angela Simmonds. Ms. Simmonds' career in public service includes serving as a member of the Legislative Assembly and as Deputy Speaker. She is known for her work on land ownership and rights within African Nova Scotian communities. Her legal background, particularly in land titles clarification in historically African Nova Scotian communities, showcases her dedication to addressing historical injustices. Ms. Simmonds' contributions to the political and legal landscape of Nova Scotia are notable, and her legacy is one of courage, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to equity. And Councillor Iona Stoddard is a distinguished leader in local government representing District 12, where she advocates for sustainable community development and environmental stewardship. Her election marked a significant milestone in the representation of Black women in municipal politics. Her grassroots approach to governance and her ability to connect with constituents highlight her impact on local politics and community development. She was the recipient of a volunteer award from Mayor Mike Savage in recognition of her work with local organizations. Councillor Stoddard has worked as a judicial assistant for the provincial courts and as a shop steward and vice president for Local 7 at the Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union. Councillor Stoddard is a member of the Appeal Standing Committee, the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, the Community Monitoring Committee, the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee, the Halifax and West Community Council, and the Western Common Advisory Committee. Pretty amazing. So please join me in a warm round of applause. Thank you again warmly for your generosity in being with us this evening. Okay, so we're going to jump right to it. I have a very general set of questions that I will be posing our panelists, and really it's whoever would like to answer can please go ahead, And we'll just see how the conversation goes and where it takes us organically. So the first question I would like to ask you is perhaps a predictable one, which is a question about beginnings. In the sense of what motivated you to enter politics. How did that happen? Oh, thank you so much. I forgot about that. Yes, I will do that. I will do that. So the first question is about beginnings, of course, maybe somewhat predictably. And I'm asking our panelists to share with us what that looked like for them, how they came to enter the political arena, and how did you get started? In no particular order, whoever might like to begin that.
Maybe I'll start. Since senators are not elected, and historically senators were appointed. And it was with the election of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2015 that he made a decision to change the Senate appointments process and established an independent body to adjudicate applicants. And I had just faced a concrete ceiling. And when I faced a concrete ceiling, it made me pause, because I certainly knew about glass ceilings and had broken a few. And I had no idea that once I broke through the glass ceiling that I would actually face concrete. So I was at a bit of I was in a space where, I was feeling jaded. Can you believe that? I was feeling jaded. So when I heard Prime Minister Trudeau talk about this new process, I kept saying to myself, I don't believe it's going to work the way he says it's going to work. And I continued to just go about my life. But my husband kept telling me, Wanda, he's looking for people like you. Wanda, he's looking for people like you. Every day I come home from work, he was being hired. Wanda, Justin Trudeau was on again, so I couldn't get to the top. So I thought, what do I have to lose? I have faced a concrete ceiling. What do I have to lose? So I applied, and then I went on with my life. And receiving the phone call was a bit of a surprise, because I was not expecting it at all. So that's the short version of my story.
I can second. My journey, to be honest with you, was never to be in politics. My road has always been about advocating and speaking up for those that sometimes don't always have that voice. And so working with young people and working in a community, I was able to kind of navigate systems in that way. Until I realized that having children, you have to advocate twice as hard to do the work that needs to be done. And it all started, you mentioned the school board, but it all started when I was consistently pushing back with the school board about how our young people's treatment in our public school system, specifically in my riding, and how they were being overlooked on numerous occasions, and they were getting the short end of the stick. So consistently pushing back, folks in community encouraged me to run in an election, which, if anyone knows, but an election is for everything else is like, huge amounts of people, large amounts of support. A school board campaign is like a couple $1,000, and you're doing all the work yourself. So I had to learn that way, but I knew it was important, so that's why I stepped up, because I knew there was an importance for me to be in a position where I can make decisions.
Thank you. I'll go next. I just want to, as this question is often asked, quite often, and there's so many places you can start to answer the question. I kind of fell into politics, not really thinking about it in any major way. But then when I stopped and think about it, when I left Nova Scotia and moved to Toronto, I became involved in activities at the school for my kids. And it was around the 60s, early 70s, and that sort of thing. And, during the huge, Black people as well as women were all coming together to do that kind of work. So, I started doing some social activist work with, from my job where I worked at the Mount Sinai Hospital, where we worked with a group of women who were food supervisors who had very low pay. Those women worked in mostly nursing homes. There was a few of us that worked in hospitals that had a better paying job. So what we did during that time, and this is where I think I might have started thinking about maybe advocacy in a little bit bigger way, but never politics in the way that I did it here. So what happened is, because the story I think is very interesting, if people who think, when you start talking about where you started, I don't think anybody just starts. I think this is probably all kinds of stuff that leads to where you need to go. So what happened, there was about 4 of us who worked in hospitals that made a bit more money, and we belonged to the Food Supervisors Association, and the girls that worked in nursing homes, 99% women, were making such a little bit of money. But they were overseeing the homes themselves, where the dietitians were coming out once a month, just to see how they were doing, but they were doing the heavy lifting. So what happened to the Food Supervisors Association, we decided that the women that worked in hospital would support the women who worked in nursing homes. So we started this group of people, of women who, we talked to the government about it because we said, we're doing the work, we need some kind of recognition for the work that we're doing. And it took a while. So what we had to do, we fought for it. And what we had to do was build a constitution, take it across the province, to all the nursing homes to be ratified. And I led that along with 3 other women. And that just came to me lately, because this has been so long, you forget stuff. But it's really where I started my advocacy work. And so coming home and looking at my community and seeing what was not done, that I thought would have been done in 23 years, that I began to think about, I can do stuff. So I did belong to a small organization with some young people. So that's kind of where it started. And then, of course, you start talking to people, saying this could be an opportunity to do other things other than just sit on small committees. Maybe you could make your voice larger, bigger, and say more. So that's kind of where it started. But I never really thought of politics in any major way. Once you're in it, you're kind of in it, right? And then, it becomes something else than, for me, something other than I really thought it was, just starting it. I kind of figured it was kind of like, just another group of people who sort of doing advocacy, but only in a larger way. But I didn't realize at the time when I put my foot in there that it would take more time and energy and education and all those things.
Well, I couldn't go before Miss Yvonne Atwell, so I'm going to go now. It just didn't feel right. First MLA precedent to go before that, so I'm happy to share a little bit in the beginning. I think most people have already said it. It's not really anything you can think about. I think as a mom in particular, and mom at 18, your advocacy is trying to be validated and make sure your children are walking through this world respected in terms of education. And so, for me, it just seemed like second nature to do this. I was elected to the vice chair of electoral boundaries, and there's where I got a taste of really what it meant to be community consulting, being in such a position, holding power, but realizing that you have an ability to make change based on the communities that you're serving. And so that really ignited some interest in it for me. And then obviously in law school, really forming a committee, grassroots level, for the Land Titles Clarification Act and understanding the historical injustice of our people really just ignited a spark in me, and I didn't realize how big the voice was until it was out there. And once I was appointed as executive director, You know, I have an enormous amount of respect for, at the time, because the advocacy that we did, it is as a community. You know, I wrote a report while working at Lands and Forestry, whatever it's called now. It just changes names years ago. But you know, the people in charge of the land, right? The administration people. I wrote a report, you know, with 15 recommendations, and Ian endorsed them all and wanted me to lead it. And for me, that was like a pivotal moment that I said, I want to be in that room. Like, I need to be in that room. My voice needs to be there. And so I then, you know, was asked after maybe someone else in our household to run for MLA, but we'll leave that as a big secret in the room. I decided to go ahead and challenge myself and do that, and it really was one of the best decisions that I could make, and hopefully, you know, inspire other people to want to do that. But you know, I believe our journey never ends, just goes on to do other things. But I do believe we all have probably thought that we weren't going to get into politics. You know, that's a saying that so many people say is, I'm not a politician. Like, well, you kind of are, because like we're leaders, and navigating this system every day as Black women and Black folks, we are politicians. So it's how we decide to utilize that, I think. And so, you know, that was a little bit of my journey, and being the first MLA of Preston for the Liberal Party ever, just pause there for a second, ever, in 2021, I think is saying something about the direction that we need to go. And, you know, I hope to see many more young women enter that space. And it's a little bit my journey.
I also want to echo our MLAs who said, I wasn't interested in politics. I don't know. My husband ran in the district that I'm in now, and well, he actually didn't run. He didn't put his name in, but he was looking at the newspaper at the other 5 candidates. And he said, well, I'll just be the 6th candidate, another old white man, along with these. So, I mean, he kind of took it, you know, in stride, and he said, no, I'm not going to put my name in. He said, why don't you put your name in? And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, why not? What have I got to lose? So in 2016, it was an open seat because the councillor at the time retired. So candidates came from everywhere, Bedford, I can't even remember where they all came from, Tantallon. And because the rule was no longer there, that you had to be live in the county or the community that you wanted to get a seat in. So, as I said, they came from everywhere. There were 5 men and myself. So I knew I had a job ahead of me. Out of the 6, I came in 4th, and I felt pretty good, because as I was saying on Saturday, at least I didn't come in last, and that was my biggest fear. So, you know, in 2020, I decided to give it another shot. I had a little more experience. I kind of knew the ropes a little bit more. My name was out there, and the only thing that was happening in 2020, of course, was COVID. So everything I was planning to do had to be changed. So I had to get masks that were purple, of course. And my signs were purple and white. We got t-shirts. No, actually, before we got t-shirts, we got door knockers. I wanted to have door knockers because they would serve 2 purposes. Knock, put the door on, knocker on, and go back your 6 feet with your mask. And if they were home, I'd talk to them from the 6 feet. And if they weren't, the door knocker was there, so at least they knew I was there. So it kind of worked. And in apartment buildings and condos, I put the door knockers because the space in between the doors was, you couldn't get 6 feet. So that way, at least they knew I was there. So that was a challenge. And after a while, I said, well, people aren't real, I can see they're in there, you know, people look through the curtain. I can see they're in there, but they won't answer the door. So we thought about it, team and I, and we said, You probably think we're telemarketers or some kind of a medical assistant checking off names on the COVID sheet or something. So I was like, yeah, we need t-shirts. So we got t-shirts that said vote on the back and my name. So more people came to the door, believe it or not. So our premonition was correct. So having a little more experience, I knew I needed more signs and I needed more things in Facebook and all of that. So I kind of uploaded on my items that I had to for the sign. And as it turned out, I came in first. And I made history as the first Black woman councillor ever in Halifax Council. So, it's a big responsibility, and my goal is to talk to little Black girls, young Black women, women of color, to say, you know, you can do it. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. You know, I started off not thinking of politics at all, and here I am. So, think about what you want to do and set your goal. And I was also proud that when I got elected, it was part of gender parity.
Yes.
8 women and 8 men.
Yeah.
Another first. You know, so I tell, you know, everybody, we didn't just break the glass ceiling, we smashed it. Thank you.
You got a couple of hours, I'll tell you how it's started. If you would have said last year at this time that I would be sitting here, that I would be involved in politics, I would have simply said to you, nah, it's not for me. But I was actually... Bring the mic closer. Certainly. Is that good? Can you hear me now? I was just saying, if you would have, last year this time, if you would have, thought that I'd be sitting in this position, I would have said no. I would have said that politics is not for me. But last April, I was actually sought out. I had a couple of conversations with folks from the PC party, and I guess also the premier, asked to meet with me, to speak with me, and all of that. When I was asked, if I would consider running in the Preston by-election, it was basically, they crazy. This is not for me. But you know something? I don't know. The more I thought about it, the more I engaged with folks and spoke to folks, with regards to it, the more I said, you know what, maybe just maybe, that this is for me. One conversation that I had with my mother. My mother was 88 years old, and I said, I told her, I'm considering running in the by-election. She didn't say much. I said, did you hear me? She said, yes, I heard you. She said, Twila, for such a time as this, simply put, she said, what do you have to lose? I started to think, and I remember that when I retired in 2020 from the airport, and I remember my sister said to me, my sister, the late Reverend Tracy Grosse, said this, Twila, you're not done yet. There is still something out there left for you to do. And she said, I want you to keep an open mind. I'm not going to be here to see it. You need to keep an open mind. It's not going to be what you expect. Those were her words. So here I am. And so I made that commitment. In some ways, I always followed politics. And recognizing that politics is all about advocacy. You're representing the needs and concerns, the desires of folks. And that's really how I got started. And I just want to be, I guess, a light an example that if I can do this, that anybody can do it. And, you know, it's an opportunity. There's also challenges. But I got started as just a simple story, nothing great, nothing, like I didn't get hit by a bolt of lightning or anything like that. But that's basically how I got started. But the interesting thing, when I was working with my career at the airport, and I'll never forget it, a couple of folks said to me, you know what, Twila, you're going to go into politics. And I would just go, nah. And they later called me and said, we told you. So sometimes it's people that see something in you, and you don't even realize it. So here I am, and you know, I want to thank everybody for the support, and I'm just going to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So one of the things that we hear often is a sense of being intimidated by politics, a sense of trepidation about politics, and we know that for a very long time in many parts of the world, this political arena has been the game of the privileged. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, there's so much there about like fundraising, you know, not having access to certain moneyed and social networks. The know-how, there's so many things about campaigning, and some of that you had mentioned to us, Councillor Stoddard, in terms of the things you were learning along the way, and you're pivoting and you're trying to think of ways to engage with constituents. Can you talk to us about some of that? Like what was that for you in terms of being in that, and how do you navigate all those things that just seem like almost insurmountable barriers?
So for me, I mean, that's a great question. I think it's a lot of questions. We could just talk about that, I'm sure. So I think that is the biggest barrier when we think about financially, you know, what you have to put forward, and I don't think that people actually understand that in terms of when you run a campaign. It depends on how much funds are in your riding association. So, you know, wherever you are, like for me, I'll give my example for MLA for Preston, it's whatever money was in the Liberal Riding Association who could support me. And so that was already, you know, well there when you had someone for pretty much 16 years in government, you know, already established. So I was fortunate with that piece. But what I wasn't as fortunate with is having the door knockers, the people around you. You know, it was like 4 weeks and I was, you know, hitting the ground running. I literally had my daughter who's here tonight, Dean's bit of a political conflict. He couldn't be on the door knocking for me, given his position, but my, you know, 2 other children, and even at one point my grandson. So, and then a few, you know, I think that's why I won, he was with me. But, you know, and then a few staff people who I will say here, and I'm sure everyone on this panel will say, we would not be here or be anything without our staff. I mean, you know, that is the one thing I miss from politics right now is a staffer. I don't even feel comfortable calling them a staffer because they're people. But, you know, you can't do anything without their support or input. And so I would say that is the biggest barrier financially. And I learned that for myself. I'll give an example when I ran for leadership. You know, you have to put your own money forward, which was almost $50,000. And I said in the beginning, I was not doing that and jeopardizing my family. So for me, it was about the networking of who can support. And so that's a big barrier. And then also I'd say, like, financially, the salaries are low. People think that we make, they're low. Low. And so it's a lot of weight to carry on your shoulders. And if you want folks from racialized communities, and women in particular, who are the home, like we are like holding it down to everything. If you want people like that, you need to support them in different ways. And financially is one of the ways you can. And I think for me, those are the 2 biggest barriers. And I think going forward, if we can educate folks, especially in, you know, high schools, about how this political arena works, it takes away a little bit of that privilege. Because we deserve to be there, and our voices are so unique, and so I hope that that changes. I think, honestly, voting, our people don't, typically vote, I say. It's an increase, but we're fighting racism, we're fighting, job loss, we're fighting so many things that's not a priority when we don't see ourselves. And so I think the difference is when we will be able to see ourselves. And so, one more thing, reputation. I'll say from my own example, I talked about this when I came in this morning, this evening with Angelina, and said, I don't know if I should bring this up, but the moment that my face was on the Chronicle Herald suggesting that I owed money for a political leadership, and every other person uses funds from an association, and it was never my money, and no one understood that or came to support, was the pivotal moment that I said, I'm out. And so when you can't have those supporting people and conversation and realities, when you know this is all that we have as our voice and reputation, we have to do better as people to support that. Absolutely. So that's a little bit of that. My perspective.
That's a wonderful perspective. This is the reality of Black women and as women in these roles. There's so many other things that we can talk about, but that's the truth, right? Like that's the reality of 2023 of what's happening to our politicians and those that are around us. I mean, I say this because I know this stuff, but
you don't. It's dirty game.
It's hard. But I will also say, like, just on that question. I'm known in community because, folks that know me in community from across the province, they know me as the singer and the actor and a number of other pieces, but the party didn't know who I was. So it's that whole process of like vetting people in, figuring out who you are, your background, and like, what things are that we need to know. And so that's a tedious process to start. But as well, the financial backing. I mean, if they're not sure who you are and what you bring to the table, even though you say, and you can, communities know that, it's still a bit of a hesitation. And I will say, I'm so grateful that I am who I am, and I'm very strong in a number of ways, that if I don't receive the same type of support here, I go over here and do the things that works for me. And so I was able to, when I'm just gonna give you a little secret, because I am known in community and I have Team Suzy. Team Suzy was the team that supported me with my party team. So my party team are wonderful folks who are for the party and for the name of the party, and they do the work within the party. But as well, my team is my team that speaks for me. So if they feel like Suzy's being, asked to do too much, or there's some things that Suzy just shouldn't be doing, then my team speaks for me without it coming back to me and feeling like I'm pressured or obligated to do certain things. Like, for example, when it comes to being in politics, they're like, you have to show up everywhere, you have to do this, you have to do that, you gotta sit in church and take pictures and this and that. And I'm like, I refuse. I will not sit in church and take pictures with people that I know. That is not what I'm going to do. And so I couldn't say that because it was hard for me as someone who has all of these pressures as a candidate to say these things. My Team Suzy was like, absolutely not. Find something else, absolutely not. And knowing that you have strong people that are there to be with you and to support you in that process, it helps a huge, it helps the world, it makes a world of difference. And then a lot of us don't have a whole lot of money. I don't have $50,000 to just put up front for a campaign. And a lot of folks, not just myself, don't have that. So knowing that, at whatever party you choose, and you were fortunate to be able to have, a long-standing party that has, a large fundraising background, so sometimes that's going to be a challenge, it's going to be a barrier. But that doesn't mean that you always have to spend $50,000 on a campaign. It means that you have to do what works for you and do what works for your side, because you don't want to be disingenuous when it comes to the work that you do and what you show. right? So if you see me standing on the bridge waving to people, I mean, that's not something I would do. And you know, why is Suzy doing that? So it's like, you know, those are the types of things that you have to be true to yourself and not lose when you put yourself forward as a candidate in any way. So those are some of the barriers, but we don't have those same privileges, a lot of us don't, to put financial backing or to have, you know, a number of support folks in place. But it's also important to stay connected to your community and do the work within your community. And those people will come. They'll want to help you. They'll say, you know, like even for me, it's Suzy, I can do IT, I can do newsletters, I can do the, okay, sure, no problem, write your name down, I got you. Because I will be asking and you know, incorporating folks, because that's what we should be doing, is including people to do that work.
I think with respect to, you know, the campaign, I was blessed. Number one, the PC Riding Association of Preston had no funds. Because again, just really forming, because, you know, for so many years, you know what, the Liberal Party, you know, that was 20 years in Preston. And I simply told them this, you know, I told the folks, my supporters, my campaign team. Number one, I want to tell you something about the campaign team. By election, I had every MLA. I had a huge campaign team. They were behind me. I had to talk to them before I started. I said, you know what, I'm a person of integrity. There are things I won't do. And one of them was door knocking and campaigning on Sunday. They got that and they said, no problem. You know, we respect that. The funds came in like crazy. And I said to them, and I used to laugh a lot and say to them, it's all you do is have to show my face. No, the thing about it is, it's something said for working in community, for being involved in community, because people get to know you. They get to know who you stand for. So honestly, I can honestly and truly say this. It's like I had an army behind me, and I really did, you know, appreciate that. It's not easy. It is not easy for anybody who wants to get involved in politics. It's not easy. It's a time commitment. There are, you know, sleepless nights. There's a lot of work involved. When you're out there knocking on doors, you're putting yourself out there. And sometimes people just don't like you. It's not you so much, but maybe it's the party that you represent or whatever reason. So it is difficult in that way. But when you believe in what you're doing, you just keep moving. And so I say to anybody that wants to get involved in politics, you know something, it can be costly, but again, when people see that you believe in what you're doing, people will start to support you. People will start to help you. People will start to assist you. And so there's so many different facets of it. But it's, you know what, it's very good. And if anything, whether I won or lost, I've always said this, it was an experience that I'll never forget. And that was a good thing about it. So, you know what, again, it's, I guess, just believing in yourself and carrying yourself in that way that, yeah, I got this. There you go.
Can I just mention, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to take folks back a little bit. You know, I was born at the end of World War II. Just think about that. I'll tell you how old I am. Just when I hear you folks talking about that, I think about where our communities were then. Not anywhere really. And then when I decided to run, I think it was a novelty because the party had not done anything. But at the same time, there were people who ran in the party. Rocky Jones had ran at one point. There was other people who had ran for the NDP at that time. So I had a lot of attention on me. I didn't have to worry about money because all of those places across the province was willing to help. And I had a fabulous campaign manager. But when you think about being inside of all of that for the first time, I didn't have a history like that. I dropped out of school, went to Toronto and had to go back. And then over the years, you know, to educate myself about working in various places. But I always thought that I can do this because I could never figure out why not. I never thought about my color in that way. I never thought about coming from East Preston in that way. I never thought about coming back home. It took me a while in my own community for people to accept me. And because of my last name now, my married name, you know, who's this woman? Is she married to a white man or something? You know, I would get stuff like that. But really, it was a different time. I mean, 25 years ago was different now. And I think where we came from during that time, the community was very supportive as much as they could. Because our communities traditionally was liberal and Tory. And NDP was thought of as, you know, a communist party in ways, right? So it was a little more difficult for folks in the community to kind of accept that, right? And strong support from the union in those days, all of that. But I'll tell you, because when you're in politics for a short period of time, when you're out, you don't get any pension. For me, but those folks that'll be in there for much longer. So I think when you start putting things into perspective about where our communities are now, how far people have come, and it's only the beginning, particularly to look at politics in a new and different way with young people, and not just to run in politics. Be campaign managers, you know, move towards working inside of government so you can support and you can put your stamp on the things that you want to do. You know, and I listened to Angela in here, and we were talking about the things that you have to do to keep yourself safe. And we all have to do that, because sometimes the party will just kick you in the ass. That's right. Right? So you just have to be careful, that's all. But true story. So you just have to be careful. And this too, when I ran for the leadership, and Angela also talked about that. That was very, very hard. Again, you know, just do it. You know, you're not going to die from it. You'll get over it.
Yes.
Senator Bernard. I can laugh at that now.
I'm so glad that Yvonne talked about the political processes outside of the running for office. Because that's one of the things I wanted to make sure was raised this evening. It's really important for us when we're talking about our communities being more involved. It's not just about running. It's really about being involved in other ways. And one of the most important things we can all do is vote. I think Angela was saying this, many of us are not voting. When we give, you know, when our ancestors fought for the right to vote, and then we choose not to vote, I've heard people say things like, well, I'm not voting because I don't like anyone who's running. Well, I'm sorry, that's not a reason not to vote. So being involved in the political processes in any way possible. That is not necessarily being involved in party politics. You don't have to be involved in party politics to be politically involved and politically engaged. When I do talks in schools, I talk to young people about being politically engaged in their schools. But that's not the point I really wanted to make earlier. So the point I wanted to make earlier was one of the things we need, and what I've heard each of you talking about, is the lack of supports. And we need institutional supports. And I know there are some folks here from the Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the Status of Women. Pre-COVID, the Advisory Council used to run campaign schools. And one of the things that I've sort of encouraged them to do is to think about the step before the campaign school. Because we're not all going to be running for office. So I think, I'm not sure where the Advisory Council is today, but I'm going to throw out this little seed tonight. They caught it. I got a sign down there. So bring back the campaign school, but bring back a pre-campaign school. These kind of conversations need to be happening in different spaces. They need to happen in schools, they need to happen in communities, and quite frankly, they need to happen in our churches. because that's where you'll find a lot of people. So having the conversations, encouraging people to be more politically involved, and then those who are choosing to run, support them. Support the people who are stepping out and stepping out with faith. And as you say, Yvonne, it's not going to kill you. One of the things I always heard was, you know, that which does not kill you. Someone finished it for me. Will make you stronger.
That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely. So face the fear the fear. You know, face the fear. Do it anyway. Get involved because it won't kill you. I want to repeat that because I think it's an important statement.
Well,
You're still standing?
Yes.
I'm still here. Yes. Unlike all of the panelists that are up here, I am a counselor. And when I ran for council, I have no party behind me.
That's right.
It's
That's
all
right.
me. So if there was fundraising or my team went out and asked for funds to support me, it was all them. Like I said, there was no little pocket or anything that I could draw from. I also put some of my own money in, you know, not $50,000, but, you know, I had savings and I said, well, this is a good cause and if I want to run, I have to spend some money. Another unfortunate thing that happened in 2016 was in 2020, you weren't allowed to ask companies or corporations for money because there was rumors go that, you know, corporations have big pockets and then they pay government to support them later on. So to do away with that in 2016, they stopped that. No corporations, no development, no. So that was another thing that hurt because I had a lot of friends in development that just wanted to support me, industries, you know. So what I had to do is go to them and say, well, I can't take your business check, but I can take a personal check. Some liked the idea and some didn't. So, you know, I had to go with the ones that did. And it was a struggle, you know, not having that political background. I liked the fact that I could go to door, though, and say, I'm nonpartisan.
Yes.
That saved me, that I could say that. I'm not coming to you as a liberal or as NDP. I'm just coming to you as Iona Stoddard. So I was very proud I was able to say that. No offense, no offense. Well, thank you for that. So it was a struggle, and we managed. You know, we got 50 signs at a time. Okay, we can pay for those, and then we got 50 more. And eventually, I had a stock, and I had somebody that was doing in-time services. They would answer. They would answer emails and they would do Facebook, and my son was the one that ordered the t-shirts and put a lot of, he did my profile. He did a lot of things like that, and you have to account for that in money, because that is a gift. So you can't just say, well, my son did it, he's my son, so he did me a favor. No, you have to, I had to ask him, if you were doing this for someone else, what would it cost? And put that in my budget, because everything in my budget had to be to the dollar.
Yes.
You know, if I got little Miss Ross down the street said, I love you so much, I want to give you $10. Anything under 50, okay. But if she had said, I want to give you $55, name, address, amount. Because they want to be able to go back and say, okay, you actually collected this money. Did she give you maybe 60 rather than 55? So a lot more balancing and checking and making sure that you have enough money for your supplies. So it was a struggle at times, and you knew that any paper that you photocopied, any ticket that you used for a draw or something like that, came out of your own pocket.
Yes.
So anyway.
Maki, can I just say one thing too, just on that point? I also think and believe that there's definitely a different way we can do politics, because signs don't vote, and t-shirts don't vote. So I think if you show up as yourself, like don't let that deter you from, putting yourself out there. And then on that other point, poor Angelina and Dre and AJ are like, who got paid for what? Like, good on you, Steve, good on you. Because my kids are like, there's no salary there, you're just helping support. So maybe teasing. But the other piece too is also a thing that I think is really important for anyone who is considering going into politics, and it just came to me now when we were talking, is when you start up your office, that is also your own money you use at first, and then get reimbursed. So all the people who want you to support the tournament and the game, that was mine first, then I got reimbursed. So it's not just like this access. I think it might be different for whether federal or municipal, but for provincial, there was definitely new legislation put forward that, you have to reimburse for something and everything has to be approved. So just know that. That was a surprise for me going in for sure, that I had to buy my desk and set up literally my office, and my staff also is part of that budget that takes away from supplies and supporting community. So I think if there's some changes in advocacy, all as like people that we could do is advocate that also needs to be changed and a bit separate, because they're trusting us to be in the legislature, then you should trust us to know our budget and funds. And it shouldn't be such a process that you're nervous to spend differently than what you may get reimbursed for. If I didn't have my picture on something, which speaks to Suzy about where you want to show up, if my picture wasn't on there, but I wanted to support something, I couldn't get reimbursed. So just know those little things like that, I think is really important for people too.
So that also plays a role in what you were saying when it's like only affluent folks, typically are in these roles. I had a conversation with another MLA, and we were joking because we were in Ottawa, and we were coming home. We're like, so how are we going to expense this? Like, are we going to send this, just going through all stuff. And he had said to me, he was like, Suzy, this is why rich white men who are lawyers are in these roles, because they're retired and they have money and they're, and typically that's what we see when it comes to any type of political landscape. It's older white men who are affluent, who have some, and even women as well, but that's the type of folks that are in these roles, and because they can't afford to do that, so they can front, $10,000 in the first 2 months, and some of us cannot. So when I say I can't support the basketball team this month because I literally have gone over my budget, it's not because I don't want to, it's because we just don't have it on hand to give until after we get it back. It's really interesting when it comes to MLAs, but I don't know what it's like federally if there's budgets in between.
Like that.
You don't even need to ask.
It was changed. I think it was new.
It wasn't like that when I ran.
No, it was changed. There was a big scandal, I think.
Money anyway. But you got your budget.
Yeah.
And you got everything paid for. Of course, you had to keep it within.
Use the mic,
and there was
please,
no fuss
Yvonne.
about it. It was just
The mic.
they just give you the money for your office, and you spend it the way you want to spend it.
Yeah. No.
But I think that what's happened over the years, and that's when I wasn't involved in, whatever, is it's all about accountability. And so I know what you're saying. Like, you have to pay for things up front, then show all the receipts and all the backup, and then get reimbursed for it. So even although you're in the position and whatever, you still have to have some source of funding, because you're putting that out-of-pocket expense and then getting reimbursed. And I can tell you right now, the money.
You're right. They expect a lot for your vote, so you should have that conversation, right? I mean, we're worth more than what that budget is. I'll just leave it there. I'm out of politics, but I'm going to skip it.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
No, yeah.
But I think
it's good.
I think both provincially and federally, changes around financial accountability came after the crisis, after a scandal. And so we end up, paying the price for that, right, when that happens. But I've seen it happen in both levels.
Yes.
For sure.
Well, as far as council goes, we start with nothing and we end with nothing. That's all I'm going to say.
you think about your own experiences of being mentored and how you think about the mentoring work that you do, and how maybe that all fits into young Black girls, Black women who, you know, let's say maybe are not even really thinking about politics potentially, but how does that kernel even start?
All right, I guess I'll get started. I am a mom of 4 young girls, and I also have 3 boys, but 4 young girls. And for me, everything that I've done has always been about making sure that they see positive, empowering women, Black women, and Black folks in their life, because, you know, it's really important for them to really acknowledge the fact that they have that type of power within them. And I've been fortunate to be mentored by a number of women in this room, young and old. And I am grateful for the relationships that I have, because that's what helps support me in the work that I do. Whether it's in this position as an MLA or in community, I think, you know, us as Black women, we wear a lot of hats. And sometimes we need to be picked up sometimes, because, you know, we need to have those conversations and phone calls every once in a while, and check-ins, and then stops and talks in the grocery store saying, I'm praying for you, I need that. But I will say that, like, every day of my life has been a time where I encounter folks that are consistently inspiring me, and I hope that I'm doing the same for others. So I know that I have to, in this role, I have to walk a certain way, but I'm grateful to be raised up in a way by my moms, by my aunties, by my grandparents, and by community, that I'm able to, you know, at least have a humbling and a respectful manner when I'm in this role and when I'm not. So I'm always very mindful of where I'm at, where I am, what I'm doing, and who I'm around. But I will say, the way that I talk is the way that I talk everywhere. I'm just not saying things that I shouldn't be saying when there's children around. But yeah, so I'm constantly being mentored, and I'm grateful, no matter what capacity that is I am.
I am constantly being mentored as well. And I think a lot of the people in this room that mentored you probably mentored me in the spare time.
Yes.
But yeah, you need a mentor, somebody to bounce things off. If you're having a situation you don't know how to handle it, you know, before you do anything, talk to your mentor. They may have a different way to deal with it. They may say, just leave it alone, or they say, come back to it another time. So there's a lot of different answers you could get just by asking your mentor. So I think that's very important. And also I want to mention, when I said, you know, telling the little girls that they could do anything, don't let anybody say you can't. I've seen some of those little girls afterwards, and I have to tell you about one. We were at a volunteer award, and one of the little girls came up to me, and she was so happy. She was like, you won, you know, and they had a little school mock election. And she said, I even voted for you there, and you won. It was so cute.
Yes.
And, you know, I just looked at her and I smiled and I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? She said, Prime Minister. I said, that's good.
I've had a number of mentors, and I've got a couple of mentors that are here in the room, but I just want, mentors are so important. You know, family, of course, mentors, sister, mother, aunts, and all of that. But there's a person I want to point out here, and I hope she doesn't get upset with me. That was my second year of university, and at that time it was called the Canada Employment and Immigration Center or whatever. And I went there as a summer intern. And I tell you, it was a young lady there, and I hope she doesn't get upset with me, because it's important. People need to know these things. There was a young lady there, and her name was Lynn Jones. And this is no word of lie. She took me under every day. We'd come in, how you doing, Twila? How are things going? Is everything okay? Treating you okay? If you have any situations or any concerns, please come to me. And that was so great. But not only that, saying how you doing, whatever, being able to provide that direction to you. Being able to say, you know something, you're here because you've got the ability, now show it and do it. You don't have to set back. And so I really did appreciate that. And you know something, and you know what, she's followed me all throughout my career, and but that was important. Those are the starts that you have. There's also another lady here, and you know, she's a great mentor. Hey, it's amazing how you're surrounded by folks that mentor you, that you can call, that you can ask for advice, that you can ask for direction. And so I really appreciate that. But not only in terms of those that have mentored me, I now have the awesome opportunity to actually to mentor others. And so I really do appreciate that, because one of the things that I found when you're out there in public eye, folks are watching you. They're watching you. And so sometimes in the grocery store, in Walmart or wherever, folks will come up and whatever. And so, but I do appreciate that. So you know what, I've been blessed to have mentors, and now I'm just trying to give back by mentoring others. And that other individual that I want to mention, and I hope she doesn't get mad, I think we need to talk about these things. We need to let people know, is the Honourable Diane Francis. I remember when you know what, in the house or I was speaking, she actually dropped me a line. She actually give me a call and say, that's great, you know, or you know what, don't forget to do this, don't forget to, you know what, doing it to help, to support. I appreciate that, and that's what we have to do. We have to build each other up, and mentorship is so very important.
Oh yes, I believe in mentorship. I've had a few different mentors over my life. My daughter, who's at the back of the room, is also a mentor for me, and hopefully one for her. But a friend of mine told me, it was an MP in Ottawa. This was years ago, and she had said that we should all have at least 3 or 4 mentors. We should have a financial mentor, a spiritual mentor, you know, an education mentor, and a mentor that for our own mental health. And sometimes we can't get that right away from our same mentor. So it's good to have different mentors that you can trust and that you can call on. Of course, Lynn and Mayanne has been mentors probably to half the people in this room already. So, and that's amazing. And that's amazing. And you're right. You always need to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, right? Women mentors, I've had male mentors, so my family is huge, and so there's lots of mentors inside there too. So I'm grateful and thankful in anything that I can do. I've known young people who are now thinking about politics that I've talked to years ago. There's some that I worked with and who, you know, who weren't working and who didn't even know how to get a job. And now I see those folks and they thank me for mentoring them. And so, I mean, it is really important that we support each other, because we can only love each other. I mean, nothing comes out of hate, so we may as well love each other and support each other.
Sure. I was mentored by a whole association. The Association of Black Social Workers. I'm one of the 4 founding members. That association will be 45, so I started as a baby. That association is turning 45 this year. And so, you know, on those days, during those times that I needed to reach out, they would be my first go-to. And for years, there were only 4 of us. But the government thought there was a whole army of us. So we would leave it at that, you know, let people wonder.
Yes.
We were strong. We were fearless. We were brave and courageous. And we did things that people thought we shouldn't. But at the end of the day, when I think about the various steps on the journey that I've had to make, I've always been able to go back to ABSW and rely on that organization for support. Yes, many individuals, but as an organization, I would say that they've been phenomenal.
I mean, not different than what anyone's already said. I think mentorship is really essential to how we are able to be successful and thrive. I mean, for me, I have been very strategic about the mentors. They look very differently. For me, it was taking the best of someone that I see. You know, I'm thinking I want a little bit of that. How do I get that? And be able to learn from someone. And then also now, you know, be able to mentor folks, because I believe one of the things that's so important is that when we do things in private, they will always be public. And so, you know, by mentoring one person, I don't need the world to know. I don't think we do. It just shows up in what we do in our work and how community sees us. And I think for me, you know, having a daughter, I'm gonna not cry now, I'm looking at her. You know, I say she's my mentor, and I hope that I've mentored her, but I need to be able to look at her every day in the face and be okay with what I've done in the public, be okay with who I've talked to. And for me, it's a real commitment. I don't take mentorship lightly. If I can't be invested in your life and helping you, then I don't deserve to be your mentor. And so I also think we as people need to make sure that we're doing it intentionally, and especially as women, you know, be able to uplift one another. And you know, I definitely think there's power in being first, but not so much power in being more. And so I think that's why we are first, is because we want things to be multiplied by 2 all the time. So I think it's wonderful about the counselors and the gender parity. I would like to see one other Black woman, then we can really celebrate some, you know, some on council. So keep mentoring is what I'm saying. I'm going to keep mentoring, get us in there. But you know, for me, I think that's really key for me in being able to. And I take a lot from you know, Angelina in particular as a young person. You know, she's called me out a little bit about some changes. You know, I think as older folks have a certain way and a certain standard, and you know, how we're supposed to dress and show up, and she's often telling me about things like that. So I really value learning from young people, because you know, we need to uplift them instead of challenge them all the time and not thinking the same way that we were taught. So I think there's power in that as well.
Young people keep us fresh.
Giving us our flowers. I learned that term. Giving flowers. I have my flowers now. I'm like, what?
So I'm sensing and I'm feeling this would be a good time to turn towards a broader conversation. We have a lot of experience and knowledge and wisdom here in the room. So I think it's we can open it up. If you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to share those now.
I'll go. This panel is so fabulous. I've never been to such a thing before. So it's so nice to sit back here and see the fruits of labor from those that came before all of us, because that's exactly what it is. But I remember myself running, and I just love to hear your experience on this one, is that, like, it's okay to say at some point you feel adequate, and like people are saying, why not, I can do it, or what have you. But for me, the reality is that there's those points where you don't feel adequate, and you don't feel like you can do it. And I remember when I was preparing, and I was in the middle of running for the party, if you had seen my dining room table, You would have thought a storm came through there. I had a whole library of books piled up on this table and resource material galore because I kept thinking, I don't know enough, and they're not making me look stupid. I'm not getting out there and not being able to answer these questions, or what do I know about fishing down the whatever shore? So I felt like I had to be that much better and read material and whatever. I can still remember, because I had a real great base in the trade union movement, that some of my friends came to join my campaign. And they literally took my books and they just threw all the books aside and said, girl, get rid of this stuff. Like, you know, you don't need, you know the answer. You've lived the experience. And it was at that moment where I really found strength in that, well, maybe I don't know the particular thing that happened or the particular thing about fishing or whatever, but I do know about how people in communities operate, what they feel, how they did it. I did that all my life. So they helped me to find myself within that. So I'd be really interested in knowing when you didn't feel adequate or you didn't feel that you know that you were there. What did you do, or what helped you through that?
I can tell you, for myself, I can tell you 2 words: imposter syndrome. For the longest time, I said, what am I doing here? I have no idea what they're talking about. And it kind of scared me. I thought, ouch. Why didn't they vote for me? Did they know who I am? But you know, a couple of counselors actually mentored me, and they said, you are here for a reason. Don't let, you know, a couple of phrases in a policy throw you off. You will learn this stuff, but you are here for a reason. So let the imposter syndrome go. You're here, you got voted in, people respect you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I can hear what you're saying, and I understand that. I think that for me is when I got elected, and I'm now, you know, in the office of the NDP and all of these folks. One of the things I demanded to help me through this was to have black staff. So I needed a black researcher, which at that time was Floyd Cade, and a black person to assist me in the office, which was Regina James at that time as well. And then there was another woman, I forget her name right now. I didn't know her before time, that would come to the office and work at the front desk. So those were the 3 people. But sometimes the problem was when the 3 of us got together in the same room, people would walk by the door looking at it, like we were going to plant a coup or something. So, but I understand that I had to see people like myself, and I demanded that. So I got it. I just wanted to add to that because I think I had a headache for 6 weeks. So this stuff, you have to go through it. But like I said, usually, what you say, if it don't kill you,
it makes you stronger.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'll say for me, the difficult part was really knocking on the doors and being questioned, how can a black woman represent me? I think the writing's very, you know, it's very broad here, and being on the electoral boundaries, when we changed it to Preston, you know, I was walking down, you know, Montague Estates, and they're like, no, we're in the wrong riding, we're not Preston. I'm like, no, you kind of are. And, you know, and then even more to that was having Angelina, you know, knock on a door and someone speak so boldly about your black mother and how we won't vote. So those were the difficult conversations of like protecting, because when you go in the legislature, it is a popularity contest, really. You know, when you see people being turned like this and doing this foolishness, they're not actually there to move anything forward. So I didn't find that intimidating because I'm smarter than that. So, and I think we are, and we're adults, and I didn't find that part as intimidating. What I found it extremely lonely to what Ms. Yvonne was talking about is being in a space and you're the only one. And so it was really important to have my constituency reflect me. But also, you know, having allies. Like I may not know, but those staff people who've been there for 10 to 12 years who are like they want to be it and they don't want to be the person, but they want to support you. I leaned into that, and much like you know, with your friend and you getting the confidence of that. So I think for me that is something very strategic that I did, and it was more about being on the doors and knocking and people questioning how, you know, a man who was white for 20 years, there was no question about how he could represent black people, but the fact that a black woman showed up, you know, how can you represent me? And I'm thinking, y'all, we're talking about housing, education, I don't think it matters, right? Can I advocate for the issue of what matters? Yes. And so I think it built my confidence a little bit to be able to kind of realize, like, I know way more than you if that's the question you're asking me, right? So.
Good point. I felt very inadequate, probably our first sitting. So we were elected in August, and then there were a number of things, like trying to figure out what our space looks like, who we have with us, and all that stuff, which it was a whirlwind. You never knew. You had someone in the office working with you, you didn't know, like all these things happening. But the reality of that really hit me the most was when I was sitting in legislature, and it was probably like the first few days, maybe the first week, and we're sitting there and I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, oh, I gotta write this speech, I gotta get this stuff together, like I gotta research everything, and we have researchers and stuff, but you have to put it in your own voice and you have to make it you, right? And so I'm trying my best to figure this out, and then, you know, like you said, then the banter and all this stuff happens, and then I go, hold up, Suzy. Wait a second here. These people got elected, and I'm looking up because the first week we do a maiden speech where we talk about who we are, where we come from. It's typically an hour, and so I'm doing all this research for all this stuff. And then as I'm doing this, and then in the background, folks are in the background, you know, petty conversations and yelling back and forth and tapping the table and heckling and stuff. And I'm going, hold on. I got elected by Halifax Needham residents. And I'm here to represent these folks who elected me to be here. I'm not here for none of that, all of this extra stuff. I'm here to speak for my people. And over 5,000 people voted for me to be in this seat. So no one in this room is going to intimidate me. No one in this room is going to tell me what I think and how I should feel. And once I got to understand that I am my own boss, not, you know, I am, but like no one can really dictate other than like our own guidelines and all that stuff that we all have to follow. But literally, no one is telling me you're going to be fired. The people will decide whether I'm here or not. And the other legislators over there are not those people. So after like the first weekend, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm just going to write my own stuff. I'm going to say what I want to say, and I'm telling other people to tell me what I need to say. So the voices of the people are the voices that I express when I'm in legislature, because that's what I'm there for. And once, you know, that feeling of like, I don't belong here, I don't belong here. First, because there was not a black woman's face on the wall. Secondly, because there was a black man's face on the wall in legislature, but there was no representation around the room other than us four who were elected, and we're not all with the same party. Luckily, we gained really good relationships, and we forged something that I think they weren't ready for. But at the same time, when you start, you don't know. You don't have all of that, right? So I had to really be like, listen, Suzy, you were elected by not them. You have a whole group of people you got to represent, and you got to step up and do that. And once I got that, I was like, I'm good.
Wow.
May I say something?
Yeah.
Lynn Jones, you know my mom, and she ended up coming from Barbados, Washington, Florida. I was born in Sydney, and ended up being the food director over at Churchill Hospital. Don't know my real dad. Stepdad was only there for a while. But my mentor, my coach, my best friend was my mother.
Yes.
You women, if I could use that choice word, not negatively, are so mentoring everyone here. The power that you have, the words of determination, fortitude, strength, it covers all colors, all people, male or female. So I just want to say that I'm very proud of you all, because you helped me. And this is what you're out there doing. Yes, we're here for black women. However, you are influencing everyone. And that means a lot. So keep up the great work, because I need a lot of mentoring.
I think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. I know that I'm hard on myself, and you know, I think Lynn talked about feeling of inadequacy. It can be overwhelming at times. And so yes, you know, sometimes you do feel inadequate. But what I've learned to do, I've learned when we get up and have to do those member statements, when we have to do those resolutions, I put everything I got into it. Because I believe in what I'm doing. I told someone, I know why I'm here. I'm not here to please you. I'm here because I'm an elected representative from my community to represent my community, my riding of Preston. One of the things, this idea about being by yourself. Well, you know something, I was prepared for that so well in my work career. When you're in a situation and you work with 200 people and you're the only black, you gotta, every day you gotta dig deep and you gotta believe in yourself and in what you're doing. But I tell you, I don't worry about that stuff. What helps me is to know that you've got that support behind you, that there's a community, that there's individuals who support and believe in you. And I'm telling you, as women, as black women in politics, I'm saying to the community, please get behind us. Please support us, because we need you. We need your support. That is the very thing that keeps us going and makes us recognize, you know what? I'm doing this because I have folks behind me that believe in me. They're giving me that little push and that little nudge, and so I want to thank you for that.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to say how proud I am of all of you and what you do and who you represent, really and truly. I ran myself in 2016 against an old white guy in the county of, in the Eastern Shore, and I remember walking into City Hall, and he was there, and he said, looked at me and he said, "What are you doing here?" Just like that, like, didn't belong. But anyway, that was a fight in itself, because that area went right to Ecum Secum, and like yourself, Angela, I heard those same things. She'll only represent Preston, which was kind of ridiculous because I don't live in Preston. You know, I live in Lekeko, which is a white area. But, you know, it was, you know, my face. And so we face a lot of racial challenges. There's a lot of anti-black racism out in that old Nova Scotia, you know. And so, but I just wanted to say that. I also ran provincially against another old white guy, Keith Caldwell, and that was prior to the Preston boundaries changing, and so that was another big challenge. And again, you know, those types of things. So I really applaud all of you that have made it. But like you said, Twila, I would never change that experience. It was such a learning experience. I heard from fishers to professors to coal mine. I mean, you know, just the whole gamut, and it's something I'll never forget. Yeah, so if anyone's thinking of running, it's a great experience. Try to be successful though.
So I just wanted to make a comment, a couple of comments. first of all, I would say, when I was appointed to the Senate, we were the first group of this new process. So we were sort of the guinea pigs. There were 22 of us, and there were actually almost 3,000 applicants.
Wow.
And so, being in that place, I knew that it was an incredible opportunity and responsibility. And one of the things that they did an orientation for us. And one of the people who was part of that orientation was an older white male senator who has become one of my very good friends. He was so amazing. And one of the things he said to me, he said, you know, you have to remember that you're not arriving here as a newbie. You have had an incredible career already. And so that's what you bring into this place. So I've always remembered that, and you know, I found that to be really powerful information. But I remember my maiden speech. I don't like that term, maiden speech, by the way.
I don't like the term.
Then we have to change that. But I remember my maiden speech. I had so many senators coming up to me and saying, "That was so wonderful. That was amazing." And I think, you know, that speech was okay, but it wasn't all that good. But I think part of it, you know, I know the subtext, right? The subtext was, you speak pretty well. That's pretty good. You're not expecting that. You know, you're a black woman. I mean, I'm sure they weren't saying you're a black woman, you know. But that was a pretty good speech for you. I know that was the subtext. So I figured, okay, I better make my speeches a little better. Make them a little better. So it's knowing the game and choosing how you want to deal with that game. You know, do you play the game or do you rise above it all? And I always choose to rise above it all. I'm not going to get sucked into the vortex of that system. So for me, that's a survival in systems that weren't set up for us to be in. And of course, you know, I had that whole experience of 30 years in university. So, you know, talking about institutional barriers and learning how to navigate them, all of the experiences I've had up to my arrival in the Senate helped prepare me for surviving in the Senate. Oh, and one other thing, can I just share this? I want to share this. Marvin, who's the board president here.
Mervin, over here.
Mervin, I'm sorry. I said Marvin, Mervin, sorry.
No.
So I was the first African Nova Scotian woman to be appointed to the Senate. When I arrived, I was the third African Nova Scotian in the Senate. And one of the things that I set out to do was to make sure we had more senators of African descent. So I've done a lot of different things to make that happen. 2 weeks ago, we had a photo taken. There are now 7 African Canadian women in the Senate.
Yes.
And we're excited. But did you hear what I said? There are 7 African Canadian women in the Senate. There has not been a black man appointed to the Senate in the last 7 years.
Wow.
And guess what? There's only one person asking questions about that. And I ask the questions every chance I get. And I've made a commitment that I will continue to ask questions until there's another black man appointed in that place. We have a group called the African Canadian Senate.
Yes.
You know, there's enough of us to have a group, but we're all women.
Yes.
And I have a problem with that. I think that we're dealing with, you just reminded me of that. We're dealing with systemic anti-black man racism because of something that happened.
Yes.
And some people here know what happened. I'm not going to mention it. But all black men who've applied since then their applications are being viewed through that lens. I have huge problems with that.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I will continue to do while I'm there. I've got 4 years here. And so I want to see a black man. So if there's any black men in this room that want to apply, you know. So I know this is
Time for me to go home.
I know this event is celebrating International Women's Day. But I have been advocating for black men.
Yes.
for most of my career. And so while I advocate for Black women and do that work, I'm also advocating for the brothers.
Yes.
Because the brothers have a different type of discrimination that they are dealing with, a different type of negative stereotyping that they are dealing with. And you know, if we're in a place where we can bring voice to that, then, and people have tried to silence me on that.
Shame.
Really, you think you can shut me down?
Not at all.
That's not happening.
Right?
And so I keep raising, I've got a meeting set up next week with someone to deal with this, so, you know.
This is what I was saying earlier about yourselves up there, the integrity and character. It covers all. So it's not just looking at, let's say, women. You're saying it for men and whoever. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Bottom line, I'm just saying. So this is what I say. I'm very proud of you all because that's what I feel you all do. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caleb. I'm from the Mount. I have a question. So my question is, how do you believe your identity as a Black woman shapes your approach to policy making and representation? Should I take it again?
I didn't hear the first one.
How do you believe your identity as a Black woman shapes your approach to policy making and representation?
How does our identity as Black women shape
Shapes your
like what we're doing, like shapes in the spirit that we're in our position in our profession. So, since I get that over first, for me, I think that it's the question of how does it not, right? I mean, I think, you know, when we show up, I will always say, you know, similar to what Senator spoke, I show up as a Black woman, but I will always show up with my Black men as well. And so I think there's just a lens that comes with that. And so how we take it into policy is, you know, for me, especially in the legislature, when we were talking about the Dismantling Hate and Racism bill, you know, when I put that forward, it wasn't just me, but I actually brought people to come to our office and make sure that the voice that I was not being able to represent, I made sure other people could. And so the identity for me as a Black woman entering the spaces is always about my voice and my reality, my identity, the communities that I serve, and I'll never be able to change that. You know, I think this is just a reality for us, and now we're at this moment where our identity, we're proudly saying, you see my color. When years ago and during the Civil Rights Movement, it was, you know, we want to be judged by the content of our character, and absolutely we do, but I also need you to see me as a Black woman when I come in. You know, this will be different for everyone, but I always say I am a Black woman who happened to be in politics. I was not a politician who is Black. And so that's very different for some people. I am a Black mother to 3 Black children, 2 Black grandchildren, and that matters to me. And I think if we own that now, we need to take that in every space. I think that's just, as long as we're in the space, you cannot not talk about race and our identity as women. So, I don't know if that answers the question, really.
I was asked once, what bothers you more, being Black or being a woman? Here's my response. You know, some days when I leave home, I decide to leave home as a Black person. Other days I leave home and I decide to leave home as a woman. But most of the time, I leave home as a Black woman. I am who I am. And so that clearly shapes the work that I do. But I always work from a place of intersectionality. And intersectionality matters. So paying attention to intersectionality, and even within our own communities, really looking around and looking and understanding who's here and who's not here. So for example, you know, sometimes we forget persons in our community with disabilities. And so how do we do that work to make sure we're being inclusive? Sometimes we forget people from the LGBTQ plus community. So how do we make sure that we're being totally inclusive in our own community? And I think it's about being intentional about those realities, being intentional about the diversity in our own communities, and also being intentional about recognizing who's left out and what responsibility we have to make sure we're bringing everyone in. So how do we do that work? How do we do it? And I believe that I'm able to do that as a Black woman because I lived, I live on the margins. I live with those intersections, and it drives my passion to keep going and to focus on that whole notion of total inclusion.
So that's a really good question. One that kind of made me go right back to when I stood up in legislature, probably like the first year in, and I had to tell folks because we were having lots of discussions on racism and discrimination and treatment of folks, and I had to really express the fact that when I walk into a room, you don't just see me as a person, you see the color of my skin first. And so I represent a group of people that aren't always heard or understood or even recognized. So I understand that and I hold that and I'm very proud of that. But as well as a woman, we didn't have very many of them in these positions. So I also stand up in a way that I understand that this is a privilege for me to be here to speak for others. So how do I utilize it in the best way that I can is being a strong Black woman. I mean, I say this because I'm kind of hesitant to say that because I think we all are strong women in our own right and strong folks in this room. But I can say, being a strong Black woman lifted up by other strong Black women and other community folks who are strong Black folks, it empowers you to do work that you don't think that you could possibly do, but you do it because you stand in a position where you need to be able to speak that truth. So in my personal life, that's how I feel. In my position, if there's any way that I can influence policy or have my voice heard, I will do so with that same power and that same strength by those folks who I stand on their shoulders.
No, I was just going to say I agree. I mean, every time I enter space, I try to enter it with respect and be aware of what's in the room or who's in the room. Because we all know once we enter a room, especially if we're the only Black person that's entering the space, you have to very quickly know where you are in that space. So it's almost like surveying the scene, so to speak. So that's what I do because that's just easier. And if I make some mistakes with the language is changing, and sometimes I don't know what that is, I have to say that. Especially when people are now, it just got more than he, she, or she, whatever. You have to really pay attention to that because I didn't grow up with that. So I have to learn that. So that's why if I enter the space, I try to enter it with respect. And I don't want to insult anybody, I haven't. But if I just don't, I'm just learning some of the language, to be perfectly honest. Remember, it was after the war.
I want to say this, people, we're talking here about Black women in politics and all of that. But to bring it back and to put it in perspective, I remember this quote by Shirley Chisholm, and it really resonated with me, when I decided to run in politics. Now, remember 1968, that was at Shirley Chisholm, and she became the first Black woman to be elected to the U.S. Congress. And this is what she said, listen carefully. I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement, although I am a woman and equally proud of that. She said, I am the candidate of the people, and my presence before you symbolizes a new era in American political history. And that is what I went with. And that is important.
Hi, I have a question to ask. So we've heard a lot about the challenges that you guys have faced, whether it's financial or imposter syndrome. I'm just wondering on how, from your own experience, have you maintained the motivation to keep pushing through certain challenges?
Well, I can speak a little about that because I did have imposter syndrome. And even when I was campaigning, there were times that I wasn't quite sure of myself. So I had to make sure that when I came home that I had the support and the, cheerleaders in my family to uplift me and make me feel that, tomorrow's going to be a better day. You're door knocking, you might not have great people tomorrow. Say a little prayer to make sure that, just to open up doors and make them pleasant. There are a lot of rude people out there, unfortunately, and there's a lot of people that look at you like, a woman, I'm not going to vote for you. You can't represent me. And again, as a black woman, I'm sorry, you're just not the person that I want to see representing my area. And I also had to be conscious of the fact that I have a historic black community in my riding, which is Beachville. So, I had to, that was another push for me because I thought, here's a black community, they need representation. And that was one of the things I had to stick with and help motivate myself as well.
Where's Maya? I seen you earlier. I couldn't see you. Oh, there you are. I couldn't see your face. Thank you for the 2 volunteers, first I must say, for being here. Young people, yes. So for me, quite simple, it is my family, my children. Really, at the end of it, it's my faith. I really believe, I don't know what's next, but he does, and I'm just going to follow and keep praying, and as long as my family is proud of me and happy, then that's really all that mattered to me. And I remember the last day in the legislature was really, moving for me, and the one thing that mattered and I've seen the most that was just so, I'll never forget, was seeing my children upstairs and my husband, and the first thing they said when we left was like, if they had only treated you like that. Absolutely. The entire time. And so I lasted, and much to what other people have said on the panel, our politics is way before we become elected or appointed. It's really in our advocacy, and I really do believe, I love that Senator brought it up earlier in terms of our political involvement doesn't just mean it's someone who is the political person, because I'm sure Minister will agree, we are just out front, but it's the deputies behind, it's all the staff people. If I didn't have them, I shouldn't be standing out front. And so that is where we need people. And so back to your question, what keeps me going through the challenges is my beautiful family, and I want to leave a legacy for them. I believe my father worked extremely hard for me to have my life that I have. And better for it, and I want to work this hard so that my children don't have to be the first and go through what I've gone through, and I want that legacy for them. And so that's really what keeps me, spiritually going.
What motivates me is, and I think we would all probably say similar things, but it's like, family, faith, folks around us that are grounding us, that keeps us honest, people that are a community that believe in us, and some that don't. Their honesty drives us as well to do the work, to help. It motivates us to do that work. maybe differently, right? Because we don't always see it from the same lens. But I want to say as well, I'm thankful for the mentors and the women in my life, and as well the men that have lifted the women up. But I also just know that I do this work for my children, like so that I am a legacy and so that they can be inspired to do as whatever they want to do. But as well, before I was ever a politician, I worked with young people. And young people, they are truly gems. And when they blossom and become adults, they will be amazing. And I think that is another driving force for me to be able to do this work, because we know we have so many beautiful gems in our communities, and we want them to see amazing things happen around them. And so being in this position and as well being in community is something that helps, you know, motivate me and drives me to do the work for those folks.
Family and friends. I mean, I have a very large family. And I had to get support from all of them. And I remember when I wanted to run, my father at the time, who only voted Liberal, changed his vote right away. But without the foundation, I don't know how anybody can do that. You have to have a foundation where you can jump from. And that was back then. Now I have been on, I still do politics, to tell you the truth, in my own way. But during that time, that was the only people that I trusted enough to depend on to keep me safe.
I guess very much like the others in terms of what motivates me, you know, family, community, just being given the opportunity, and I'm humbled by it, I'm telling you I'm humbled by it, to be able to serve, to be able to make a difference, to be able to advocate, because that's what's so important. I get tired of people saying you're the first this and you're the first that. That's not important to me. What's important to me is that I'm at a place and I have an opportunity to make a difference and to move some things forward that will help my community, that will help this province, Blacks, African Nova Scotian, people of African descent in this province of Nova Scotia. That's what motivates me, and I'm so grateful.
Yes. Dr. Lynch, so I think we will end by giving Dr. Lynn Jones and the Honourable Marianne Francis the final questions, the final word.
It's kind of like being the first whatever. Yeah, what was resonating with me, I was really upset this week for International Women's Day, because I heard very quietly about the passing of Dr. Gloria Warden.
Yes, yes.
And when I heard it, it was so low-key. There was no radio announcements or anything like that. And I looked at the great accomplishments of this great Black African Nova Scotian woman and say, this is not right. That she has not been given the spot that she truly deserves. Can't talk about first. But anyway, that was another issue. So I couldn't rest easy. I said, where is everybody? How come nobody's on this? So I made some phone calls and what have you and said, I don't think it's right. And someone's got to do with it. I was talking to, there was a woman named Lynn or somewhere from CBC back there. They were one of the several calls that I made, including some of the people around her family, and said, can you do something? Call papers. Like, this is not right. And, you know, there was so much done. I was so pleased, including, I think it was yesterday, was Dr. Gloria Borden Day on CBC all day long. So that was bothering. And then I looked at some of the other concerns that are percolating, it's some of which I'm involved with in the community. And I'm not hearing voices that I think need to be heard. I'm not hearing things. And I'm thinking, I was privileged, I'm going fast, but I'm quite privileged that I have been around the halls of power for a very long time, whether it be the big P politics or the little, in those back rooms and all those other things. I've been there, and I see how people have all this information or secrets, and we haven't been there, so we don't get a hold of those secrets. So my question is really simple. We have an opportunity here. We now have people that are elected or have been elected. Can you not share with us what's happening in terms of politics? What are the concerns? What are the issues? And are any of those issues related to us? What is being worked on that we don't know about or that we should be knowing that needs to be raised? You need our activism voices maybe on. Maybe you're doing something inside. But we've been here all night, like, talking about politics. Politics is about these concerns and issues in the community. What's happening? What's important? What's percolating out there? And are you getting things from inside? Because when I go to those white community meetings with women and whatever, all those secrets are on the table. So, you know, it would really be nice to know what is going on.
I think that's the follow-up session to this one. You know, you could do a whole session on that. And some of us have to leave. I actually still do some teaching, and I have a live class in about 35 minutes. So, and Merchant's been standing there for...
On my back. On my back.
But I really think that's a good topic that we should be undertaking. And I think it was some of the questions that we never got to this evening. It was on that list.
Yeah.
You know, what are some of the current issues? So I'm being serious about this. I really think you should be.
It is a longer conversation. I don't mean to interrupt there. But I just want to say, just by my short time being in legislature, the amount of time that we've had to struggle to have our legislation looked at through an African Nova Scotian lens, and how each piece of legislation affects our African Nova Scotian communities and other communities in particular. But I say African Nova Scotian because you know, I'm very concerned about a number of pieces of legislation, some around housing, some around positions of power, and some around allowing us to not debate things on the floor. So I just want people to pay attention, because I think that's really important for us to really understand that it is a longer conversation when it comes down to what types of legislation or what types of policies. Because I'm opposition, so I don't know, I don't get privy to any of the information unless it's been announced via media. So I have no idea what goes on within departments unless I inquire. So I just say this because as everyday people, we really need to be recognizing, number one, engagement in political realm. Number two, the legislation that's being put forward in legislature by any minister, and as well, past legislation, right? So I would just leave that there.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you. It was just, I was determined to be here. I'm wearing a mask because I've been sick for 2 weeks with a very bad cold, and I'm determined I don't want to spread it to anybody, so I'm wearing this, but I prayed to God and I said, please make me well. I've got to be here for them, because I respect all of you in terms of your political role. And I have to tell you that about 8 years ago, or even longer than that, maybe close to 20 years ago, I was approached by 2 politicians to run in the election. And I said, you go crazy? I'm not doing that. So anyway, the answer is no, and I can tell you which politicians they were. I want to ask you a question. And throughout my successful journey, I've had a lot of mentorship. And that's why I do a lot of mentorship now. But when I lived in the United States for over 16 years, and when I lived in New York, my mentors were mostly Jewish people, quite a few of them. And one of the things that they always said to me, one particular person, when I had my first top job on Wall Street, and I was told, they said, we never want you to publicly criticize your people. And I said, why would you say that? I'm not thinking of that. He said, I'm just telling you that. Did you ever hear us criticize ourselves publicly? So in terms of all of your politicians and in politics, what do you think about that?
Well, for me...
Get the question?
Oh. You're talking about criticizing people in council, or you're talking about other politicians that might be...
Regardless of who we are, whether we're in politics, whether we're in education, whether we're in this health field, whatever it is, do you publicly criticize our people? And this is what my advice was way back in the 1980s and so forth by a Jewish person, and that has stayed in my head. And I certainly don't go public and criticize my people. So I'm just asking you as politicians, what do you think about that?
For myself and for my integrity, I treat people the way I would wish them to treat me. So I don't expect people to talk about me. I mean, this is a different type of business. But I certainly do not talk about others because it'll always come back on you, always. And, you know, when it comes back on you, it'll be worse than what you put out. So my integrity and everything that I believe in, I don't speak about anybody negatively.
I think,
I'm so sorry. I really do have to.
Yes.
I think I saw Superintendent Simmonds here.
Yes.
I don't want a ticket on my way.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
That's a good question, and I remember speaking with you about this several times. And I'd say, for me, that is a piece of advice. I don't think publicly we should be having conversations, and I'll say specifically about Black people, that are my own people, groups of people. I won't publicly say anything negative, to no surprise, Twila, even when Minister was running, I wouldn't speak negatively. I chose not to come out about this because I didn't ever want to be in a position where someone would ask me a question about another Black woman running who may just be holding a different party. So for me, it was important to stay behind the scenes. We also had Carlos running at that time. So I think there should be a precedence among us all. Now, what I have in conversations in my house with my children and family, different conversations. But I think publicly, that's really important that we acknowledge that. I think because it is so difficult for us to be, especially when we get into rooms that were never built for us to be in. It's easy for someone to kind of take fault at that. I'd say I've never done that. Maybe once when Minister Ince came out with his vote, but aside from that, I still was very kind to him. We talked about it later about this lesson and how we show up for people. But I think it's important. Anyone asked me about Minister running, I said, good. Listen, the vote is yours, and there's power in government, and really that's all you can say. It was never any question when I talk ill, even when we're in the house sitting, me and Suzy would never go against. It was just not even an option to be having conversations. Even if I didn't agree or the legislation, I think there's power when we can have conversations behind closed doors and really talk about something. So I valued your advice when you gave it to me then, and I hold true to it now.
And I would say the same. I think wise words of wisdom. I mean, especially being in a position where all eyes are on us all the time. Secondly, we have enough people already trying to divide us. I don't really think that it's helpful for us to show that, which in turn is also why we came together as a four when we were first elected, four of us. we don't serve the same party, but we came together as Black colleagues and said, listen, we have like minds, like experiences. We need to be able to talk about these things and have each other's back about what might go on. And yes, it may not be something we talk about publicly, but it will also be something that if I have any questions or any concerns, or even just kudos, you know, good job out there, like this, that, the other, I would still do that. I mean, when the minister was elected, I was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I think, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's so wonderful to see Black excellence in spaces that we don't typically see each other, and we need to be able to lift each other up. We may have disagreements, we may not always agree on decisions, but that's, we can talk about that outside in public eye, right? We can have, you know, candid conversations, and I would hope that we could as, you know, members and as colleagues and as friends, right? So, yeah,
We've had
absolutely.
many, like
We've
cell
had,
phone
absolutely,
calls.
absolutely.
What was that?
So it's just, you know, you're right, not in the public eye, we already have enough already against us. We need to really be able to lift each other up and build each other up, so folks see that we can have conversations and do good work and build this province up the way that we need to do that.
Agreed. I can remember sometimes, like back in the day when I was actively, you know, in the House, sometimes the media would try to trick you into, will ask you a question so that your answer may be against somebody else, right? So you have to be aware of that. I agree. I mean, there's no benefit to talking publicly about each other. We do enough inside already. So, I mean, there's no benefit to that at all. And sometimes it's difficult, you know, especially if you see things that you really don't agree with. And like I said, you have to be careful with media when they're asked, because they want you to say something, even if it's the tiniest little thing. So media training is good. So you say what you want to say instead of what they want you to say. So that's how I see it. We do our best to keep our, you know, disagreements inside, especially when it's going to impact our communities, our communities. And we do our best to do that.
I agree, but, you know, I gotta be honest with you. Sometimes you get notes and you get letters and people are saying you're not doing nothing, you're not representing. That's hurtful, because I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm giving my best. Government is funny. You have to be able to navigate things. Just because you're in government doesn't mean that you're going to get everything you want or you can do what you want. But you need to know how to navigate, you know, and whatever. So it's true. We need to stay together. And those that are out there that are representing you, those that are representing us, we need your support. We need to know that you are with us. Collectively, sometimes it can be a lonely road when you feel you're on your own. So we need to embrace each other and work together for the collective good. Because I believe, no matter what party we are or whatever, I think we all want the same thing. We all want to see progress and growth.
Yes, please go ahead. I just want to say one thing in closing, that unfortunately Lindell Smith is stepping down from his position. And if there are any young Black men in the room, please consider putting your name in. Please consider it. Represent your district, or represent your community, represent Black people, represent white people. Just think about it. Thank you very much.
I think the marathon that we're on right now is indicative of the importance of the conversation and the need to continue it. And I'll be very, very interested in figuring out how perhaps we might do that. Our deepest gratitude. to all of you for your time. It is not easy to take this, I mean, you've been so generous with us. Great appreciation. I think I'll take the liberty of speaking on behalf of all of us and say our deepest gratitude.
I just want to make a quick announcement, everyone. There's so much food left. Please take some food home. There are some to-go containers back there, but we really encourage you to take as much as you possibly can. Thank you.
My mom would come back and cry. They used to always laugh. Thank you.